And welcome to Pulp Mythos. My name is Brian, and I'm joined by Spencer. The two of us watched a little movie called Fear Street Part 1, 1994. It's on Netflix. It's part of a trilogy, which is a really cool thing because one's coming out each week, which is, not the typical Netflix formula. They typically drop everything all at once. So, cool experiment. We watched the first film. We are going to go into spoilers, but before we go into spoilers, I just want to say I love this movie. I
Yes.
absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it. If you're a fan of horror, this is a solid R-rated film. Amazing soundtrack, cool characters. Everything you want in horror, and obviously we'll go into the details as the review goes on. But yeah, what was your non-spoiler? What was your thoughts?
Well, it's funny because if we wouldn't get our video immediately taken down for copyright infringement for me singing a song, even though I can't sing for shit, the soundtrack immediately. Like if you grew up at all, spent any of your portion of your life in the 90s, this movie will resonate with you so much. Just from music, the video games that are being played, uh the the outfits. Like it's one of the characters is wearing like a long sleeve shirt underneath like one of those spaghetti strap tank tops, and I'm like, holy shit! Like, it just everything. It was just so 90s. The only thing missing was like some jinkos. Like I didn't recall seeing any
Yeah.
giant jinko pants. So I was like, well, that's a little bullshit because those 90s. It's not complete without jinkos. But it was by the end of it, it felt like a 70s slasher movie, like a Halloween or the Friday the 13th. But to me, even those movies, they're the plot really isn't always that great. But this one, it wasn't just a great horror movie. The plot was actually really good. And the twists at the end were legit twists, and the amount of people that died and everything. It, like you said, a solid horror movie. I loved it.
Yeah, and like I said up front, this is Pulp Mythos. If you've not hit the sub button, please do so. Hit the upvote, leave a comment. We're gonna do the entire trilogy as they air. Um, we're gonna go into full spoilers now, so we're gonna go into what we liked about the details. So if you don't want to know that, go watch the film and then come back
We
and
would
listen.
live stream it, but we ain't got 1,000 subs yet.
Yeah, we need the subs. We're close to 500, but we haven't quite gotten that. We got the view time. We're way past that. People love to listen to us. They just don't like to sub to us. Or the 500 that have sub, just they really enjoy. It's just them. Nobody nobody else. Um, but so yeah, I don't know where to start. Let's see here. I got my notes. The opening. Let's start with the opening. The opening set piece is at a mall, which is very fitting, and we're in a bookstore, and we have the character's name is Heather, and she's got a series of books that look very similar to the Fear Street books, and we essentially have it feels straight up like an homage to Scream, specifically that film. We have a character in the skull mask, the way he runs around, the knife he's using, the way he's stalking her, and then of course you assume, oh, she the lead character. Well, she dies brutally um, in the opening scene, and then the sheriff shows up and shoots. Brian was his name. Did you get that vibe too? Like to me, it felt like this is straight up Scream.
Well, it not only that, the scene where he's pulling Heather back and it like slows down for a second, that 100% was Scream. And then in the because that was like the trailer for Scream, like it slowed down her getting like pulled away, and then it was just like Scream. So everything on it felt like an homage to 90s horror movies, even. And it the mall, the because I used to remember in our mall, Walden Books was right over by the movie theater, and I used to go into Walden Books all the time because they had comic books. They had all kinds of stuff in there, and I used to go in there, look at books right before the movie time, and then I'd walk across the little hallway over there and go into the movie theater. And it just, not only was it well done, but nostalgia. Like this is great, and we had talked about it before. For this to be a R.L. Stein Goosebumps type book, and to be as graphic and gory as it was, I think that they're playing to the people who read it when they came out, because R.L. Stine, everybody who followed his books are in their probably minimum late 20s to probably, early 40s age range. So those are all R-rated people now. So I think that that's why they probably bumped it up a little bit. But yeah, the beginning of it, 100% 90s homage.
A film like this, specifically the fact that it's part of a trilogy and that it's going to continue on, and that yes, the other two films are going to jump back in time and we're going to learn about other characters. The core main character will, clearly appear in, I believe, all three films, and that being Dina. And Dina is a great character, very well done in this film. We have her, we have her brother Josh, her girlfriend Sam, and then their friends Kate and Simon, and those are sort of the core characters of this episode. Now, of course, like I said, we're talking spoilers. Kate and Simon do not make it out of the film; they both die brutally. But those three do survive. Sam, well, she's possessed, so but she's still alive. And that's gonna carry on. But specifically those characters that we spend the bulk of the almost 2 hour runtime together with. I was very into all of them. I think all of them were well developed. I understood who they were. Um, I, you know, th- there's a book I have on script writing, and it breaks down like how do you properly build a character, and it has all these questions that you should answer for the character. And it felt like that in this. It felt like every one of these characters, I completely knew who they were. They took the time to develop all of them, and so when we lost Kate and Simon, I legitimately was like, "Fuck," that sort of sucked. But I was really impressed with the time they took to develop the characters.
Well, and the Sam and Dina's relationship, and we have talked about it before when we talk about, I don't remember what show we were watching where we were talking about how it really felt like a high school relationship.
Oh yeah, this was some high school
But
drama shit. Yeah, yeah.
but it was funny because the Dina being like sad and sitting there moping, and that felt so lifelike.
I felt that. Yeah,
Yeah, it
I could connect to
100%.
that. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, yeah.
And then even Sam, the whole I don't want to be with you anymore, but then ended up getting back together because that really was her soulmate. And I'm like, this is high school, 100%. So not only did it feel real because everybody, all these characters, no matter what kind of person you were in high school, you connected with at least one of them. And it was so great. It, like I said, not just nostalgic, but uh, relatable.
The and we're going to go into some speculation now, and we'll do that off and on because, as I said, this is a trilogy. Therefore, it's a continuing story. And one of the things they set up in this film is the way that their city is designed. It's basically two cities next to each other, that being Shadyside and Sunnyvale. Shadyside is real shitty and constant murders and horrible things happening. And now we know there's a supernatural element to that. And then you have Sunnyvale, which is just like perfect. All expensive houses, everything's nice, nothing bad ever happens there. The interesting note is when they go into Sunnyvale for the football, all the teams are there for the memorial for Heather. It says established at 1666. Sunnyvale was created in 1666. Now, the reason that's significant, the third film will take place in 1666. Therefore, the events of that film and the witchcraft and all the crazy things will tie directly into the formation of Sunnyvale. I'm making a prediction, a theory, that Sunnyvale's great, the reason everything is so great there has to some way be connected with why everything is so shitty in shady side. Whether it's the mayor, I think it's a bigger conspiracy than just a witch was killed. That's my theory. What do you think about that? Did you notice
Oh,
that?
yeah.
What are your thoughts?
No, 100%. I agree because to me, I mean, I started laughing because I was thinking of 90s Simpsons. You had Shelbyville and Springfield. Like, Springfield was a shitty side of town, but Shelbyville's got all these nice parts. And then you go back to like Parks and Rec, and it's Eagleton and, what was it? Pawnee. Like, Eagleton was this. They gave like Avion water, like out of the water fountains, and like all this stuff. And then Pawnee was this shitty part of town. But this kind of took that in a whole, like a big step in a more supernatural direction, where it's not just this shitty part of town. Like it is evil. Like something is happening, and I wonder if whatever killed the witch, uh, the way it's banished or the way it was killed, if there's some kind of like marker or totem or something that's keeping her from going across into that side of town. So I'm thinking that maybe what she's trying to do is not just get revenge on people in Shadyside, but to actually make her way into, was it Sunnyvale? I
Yeah.
think that she's trying to make her way there, but she hasn't been able to yet.
Yeah, there's got to be something to it. The witch's name was Sarah Fear, and Fier, and yeah, we know she was killed. We know that supposedly she cast a curse, and that every so often somebody in Shady Side will go crazy, be possessed, and commit a whole bunch of murders. And the magic is really powerful because no matter what you do to them, they will. If she wants them to, they'll come back. But there has to be something to the fact that Sunnyvale is so nice. And I agree that the whole idea that she's cursing them because they disrupted her bones, I think that's not true. I think there's more to it than that. There has to be. It just doesn't. What let it felt like they were brought to that spot for a reason, and
Well,
they're wrong in what they assumed it was. Her note. Remember, the Dina's nose started bleeding before the crash. Right, she was on the bus.
yeah.
And so, in other words, so there's something else going on there that led them there. Perhaps maybe they are trying to use them for a purpose to go after Sunnyvale or something. I don't know.
Well, and to me, that's the only part that to me makes sense, because the the ability to reincarnate them, the every so often coming back, because yes, her trying to get revenge, her just trying to get revenge on Shady Side doesn't make sense, because yes, evil spirits, they basically come back, they haunt an area, they do this, but for her to not only come back but to basically go on killing sprees over and over and over again doesn't make sense unless there's an ulterior motive. And I think that she is unsuccessfully getting to Shady Side or to Sunnyvale, and she just hasn't been able to yet.
Yeah, Dina is also in some way, I
Or
think.
shit, I just thought of something. uh, what if somebody from Sunnyvale, like you were saying, the mayor or something, is keeping the witch
That's where I was
alive?
going with that. There's maybe that, or there's somehow some kind of event occurred in which they agreed to continue in order to maintain this.
Purge type atmosphere.
Yeah, they have to sacrifice or something every so often. I don't know. In order for them to benefit, they have to basically have one part of the town that's just constantly in horror. Um, I don't know. Where we get three killers in this film. We get Ryan, which is the skullface guy, Ruby, who died in 1965, and then I just called him Camp Guy, who I guess we'll get to see his beginnings in the next film. Um, but those three are the killers, and I thought they were each unique and interesting, and they all had their own methods of how they killed. He was straight up a screen villain. Ruby used the razor, and then the Camp Guy used an axe.
I don't know. Ruby's was by far the most interesting to me. It. I hope that she has a part in the next one, just because I would like to know a little bit more about hers. Because the whole singing and the whole 50s, everything about her. I didn't get like an Annabelle vibe, but like I'm thinking like spin-offs. I would like her origin story, because the rest of them felt very slasher, but hers felt different. Like it'd be like a different kind of horror movie altogether. But that's neither here nor there, I guess, because they're doing a trilogy already.
What did you think of the sheriff? He was in the beginning. He shot Ryan in the head. He's throughout the entire film. He actually gets quite a decent amount of screen time. He's there with the accident, the car accident. He talks to Dina. Uh, I kept trying to gauge whether or not he knew more than he was letting on, but then he didn't
Yeah,
seem to. He never believed them. But then you had the moment at the end with the note, like, it's happening again or whatever. I'm not sure how to view the character yet. Hopefully in the next one we'll get a little more on him. But did you get anything, or did I miss something?
yes. No, no, no. I agree with you 100% because how I felt just by him, the way he was going about it, the way he wasn't surprised when he heard, Ryan. I saw him. It was Ryan. He's like, I shot him. No, I swear to God, it was him. He's kind of like, huh. He didn't like. He denied it, but it wasn't like he was like, you guys are full of shit. You're lying. It's he believed enough, and he wasn't surprised. So what I think is that whatever it is, whether it's the mayor of Sunnyvale that's like you said, basically sacrificing Shadyside. I think that he knows what's going on, and they're tasking him to keep it to like a minimum, being like, "Hey, you know, she's going to kill some folks, but we need you to kind of rein it in as quick as possible. We're doing it on the 25th." It's so I think that he knows what's going on, but I don't know if he knows the full extent.
I want to go through all the major set pieces, and this film had a lot, and they were all really well done. Obviously, we talked about the mall opening, but we had the bus sequence, which was really well shot. You have this little narrow bus, but basically the Sunnyvale crew's coming up, and they're going back and forth. They're throwing bottles. The kids are messing with them, and then Dina throws the water
It felt
tank
like
out.
First Creepers.
Yeah, it was very cheap. Yeah, Jeepers Creepers 2, I believe.
Yes,
Yes, very, very similar to that sequence. Uh, the
just the way it
second,
was shot.
the second major set piece, the hospital. We get what was the guy's name? Sam's boyfriend, Peter. Peter gets killed, and then they're chasing him through the hospital. And then all of a sudden, as they go through the hospital, a lot of people are already dead. This reminded me of Halloween 2,
Yep.
like straight up Halloween 2. And then you have Nurse Betty comes out, and he gets killed. He's like, what are you doing? And it was straight up Halloween 2. Then we have my favorite sequence in the entire film, the school scene. Not only for the nice moments of conversation, the little intimate moments where the characters are hooking up is nice, and then a little comedy. The setup, their plan was so damn clever, and would have worked. Sort of did work to destroy the killers and leading them into the bathroom. And they set up that shot at the beginning with the fact that you had the little hatch in the bathroom that you could go through, and that's how Sam, they were using her because all came down to her blood. They were attracted to her blood, and anything about that whole sequence
The
was
faculty.
absolutely amazing.
It reminded me of the faculty.
Yeah, yeah, actually,
Yeah, because you didn't know who exactly was bad. You didn't know who exactly was on what side. It was everybody was getting infected. So, the people were chasing after one person. That whole, it just, and we talk about, Halloween 2. We talked about, the faculty, Jeepers Creepers. It, they weren't copying it. It wasn't trope like they were just doing it scene by scene. Just the way it was filmed reminded me of those things, and which isn't a bad thing because Halloween 2 is amazing. Jeepers Creepers is not a great movie, but cinematically, that scene on the bus was really good. The Faculty, which is, and I don't care what anybody says, I love that movie. Like, it is,
very underrated. Yeah,
yeah, and it's a great horror movie with a good twist at the end. It so that whole school sequence reminded me of that, and I I enjoyed not only just the thought process, but how it ended up, um, how they almost succeeded, but not quite. Because, like you said earlier, we were worried, and I said the same thing and I said, Brian's like, "Well, I'm worried, so and so's still alive." I'm like, "Oh, just wait a second." But going into the final sequence, there's still all five of the main characters alive. And you're like, well, how the hell is this going to go into the next movie? And they're going to introduce five more new main characters. It's so now, going into the last movie, you're going to have like 12 main characters. So I was concerned coming into the whole school sequence. I was like, well, somebody's got to die. And then when everybody made it out, like you said, I was a little concerned. I was like, well, I wonder how this is going to transpire from here.
Well, another clever ass thing that this film did was the setup. The movie had so many callbacks. You had the scene towards okay, so Kate and Simon, they're drug dealers, um, and they were involved. Somebody had OD'd, and they were there or whatever. Well, all that plays into the plot. Like when we get to the final major
Yep.
set piece, the grocery store, they're like, well, they discover that in order to save Sam, because Sam is marked somehow, um, she has to die. And they learn through the stories of an incident that occurred in the 70s, the
Which
part
is
two.
Jacobs, by the way.
C. Berman, the character, survived, but her heart stopped. And then when she woke up, she survived. And so they're like, well, we got to stop Sam's heart. And so they're like, well, we happen to know how to do that with drugs, and we also know how to possibly revive her. And so they come up with this whole plan using their knowledge of dealing drugs and dealing with ODs to do it. And I was sitting there and I was like, wow, I was thinking of so many scenes. I was like, they did little callbacks like that. I love when films do that. It shows they weren't lazy. A lot of films, are too lazy to actually take the time to write something like that. But the fact that it all tied in, but the grocery store sequence was great. And I was shocked by how brutal Kate's death was. I mean, holy shit. Like that was some 80s style, killing.
Well, when you said all the callbacks, to me it makes rewatching it, because I did watch it twice. It makes rewatching it just as good because every scene was important. Whereas, there's certain horror movies where it doesn't really make sense, but you rewatch parts of it just to watch people die. It's not, but that wasn't this movie. Like I rewatched it because all the scenes were important, every single one of them. And that I hope that it continues like that. I hope that all of these little hints going into the next movie are like, oh shit, okay. And then, the final movie ties it all back together. And I hope that it's as well written as this first one. And like you said, when Kate got put on that meat table, and I I kept waiting for Josh to like come around the corner and save her, or her brother to come running and like tackle the dude, or for her to make it out. And then when she didn't, I was super surprised. And then 3 milliseconds later, her brother got hit in the head with the axe. I think it was her brother.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty, yeah.
yeah, like back to back, and immediately it solved my issue with, like you said. Well, is there going to be this many characters going to the next movie? Nope.
And it's funny because I was like, all right, this is how they resolve it. They do, she ends up having to drown Sam, and they, stick the EpiPens in. And for the record, they were doing it wrong. You got to hold it there a little longer. But
Yeah, the auto injector doesn't
she
inject
was
it
just
that
like click,
fast.
click, 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 click. I was like, hold it for a few seconds. But the I was thinking to myself, I was like, all right, well, what's the setup going to be for the second film? And they had already laid the seed with the C. Berman character, so I kept expecting that to resurface because C. Berman survived the camp massacre, and I knew that Part 2, 1978 was going to take place at the camp, so I assumed that was going to come into play, and it did. What I didn't realize is that Sam was going to get possessed and be and I was a little confused by how that works and the lore of all that. We get a scene where somebody is standing robed. It's, I think, implying that it's the witch. I don't think it's the witch. I think it's somebody else.
I think it's somebody from Sunnyvale.
Exactly. And there's these stones, and it's a nice, little ceremonial spot. And the name just gets carved into the rock. And so I'm like, okay, this shit is being done now in real time. Who's doing it? How does this work? What are the rules? They make the line, she makes up her own rules. So I'm very interested to find out more and more of the lore. And my assumption is the next film will be a combination of, okay, them talking to this character, her telling the story of the camp, and then it'll be back and forth, flashbacks. And the bulk of the film will probably take place in 78, but we'll still be coming back to 94.
It's Sam's mom.
Because maybe our grandma or
No, it's her
could it,
actual mom. It's
who?
Sam's. Because remember, she's from Sunnyvale.
Oh, yeah.
Back to Sunnyvale, so she's like trying to punish all the people in Shadyside. And then she's like, "You don't want to go with me? I'm going to punish you." I don't really think it's her, by the way. But how fucked up would that be?
Yeah, that'd be pretty. You are now possessed. And then they were going to pin. So that was messed up. They were going to. I mean, it made sense that they were going to pin everything that happened in the hospital and everything that night on Kate and Simon.
Well, and that was the thing too. Is they're like, "Was it them?" They were like, "No." And they're like, "Well, we're gonna have to pin it on somebody," and they're like, "Well, they're dead. I don't care." Because at that point, they see that there's not a bigger fish, but there's something way more important. They still realize that what's out there isn't gone. Even before she got possessed, like they felt like they dodged the bullet, but it keeps happening anyway. They knew that they didn't get rid of those ghosts. They didn't get rid of the, Ryan and the axe murderer and Ruby. They didn't get rid of them. They just delayed them. So they're just like, yeah, well, if you want to put it on them, then go ahead. They're dead. Who cares? But the the sheriff taking that route, it keeps showing to me that he knows more than what he's saying.
Well, when you go into other horror films, the Friday the 13th series, or specifically the Nightmare on Elm Street series, the cops always know, and remember, they always keep it covered up when these murders resurface. Matter of fact, in the Freddy versus Jason film, that's a big plot line. The sheriffs are like sort of in the know that these things happen, and they somewhat cover them up. Otherwise, so maybe that's somewhat of a nod to that.
Well, and it's also trying to keep it, out of the news, keep it out
Yeah.
of it, because they don't want to be known for that. So they know that there's an issue. They don't always know the specifics, but they know that something is happening. They know whether it's supernatural or this, but they just try to keep it as they try to keep it to a minimum as much as possible, but they can't always do that. And I think that to me feels like a similar role that this sheriff is playing, where he's basically in charge of keeping the serial killers, the serial deaths, to as small a number as possible.
Do you think there's any significance to Josh? Is he tracks this stuff for fun, all these murders and everything, and he sort of has a online friend, and
Yeah,
we
but
never see that person, but he interacts with them back and forth, including in the end of the film. You think that person's significant in any major way?
actually, I do. Right after you said that, because I wasn't thinking until what was the name of what was their
I kept meaning to write it down, and I never
it was
did.
Queen of something.
Yeah.
So what if they're the one that was the robed figure? Because I felt like they knew too much. They were kind of, some of it is, I mean, if anybody on here is listening and had AOL in the mid 90s, holy shit, it took you forever. It wasn't like now where you could basically Google controversy and find out everything that happened today in the NBA or on Wall Street. Or, I mean, there's so much stuff that's like at a push of a button. But back in the early 90s, you
I
couldn't.
just I just love that the two things you want to look up are the NBA and Wall Street.
I don't know.
I don't know why those were the two that.
Well, the NBA is big right now. The finals are on.
Yeah, the final.
And
Yeah.
I don't know why I said Wall Street. Actually, I do know why, but it's one of those rabbit hole things where it started
Okay.
with one thought process and went down like 19 things.
I don't know.
So
It's just funny.
backtracking that would just take 10 minutes.
All
But
right.
but when you look at like that person wouldn't have been able to find out all the murder thing. Like no one posted in a like. Do you remember news groups?
Um, I don't. What
It
do you
was
mean?
well the forums.
I
Like there
used
used
to
to
be
be
on a couple forums, like
yeah. So
back in the
but
day. Yeah.
so similarly, though that was like the mid 2000s. That wasn't 94. So there
No,
wasn't.
I was in for like we're talking '02.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah, yeah.
at this time frame, that person having that much intimate knowledge at such an early because they just left the sheriff's.
Yeah, and Josh was pulling like he was doing physical research because all his stuff was actual news
That's
clippings and
what I'm
stuff.
saying.
So he was having to go to libraries, newsstands, like the actual places that publish the paper and probably get back, back issues and stuff.
So what you just said is exactly my point. So that's why I think this queen of whatever is the person who is putting the names on the rocks. I think that it's her or him or whoever it is. I think that's talking to Josh.
Josh was wearing some badass Maiden shirts and listening to Rob Zombie and playing Castlevania. It's like Josh is cool. Um, Very '90s kid. Let me see here. I don't think I have much else to talk about. Like I said, the setup for the next episode is the 1978 Camp Nightwing massacre. And so I guess we'll get the full story, which is sort of cool. We get the one survivor. Um, but based on the trailer, like the movie is almost 2 hours long. I think it's a little longer than this one. I looked up the runtime and basically like we're gonna get to meet all those characters and them at camp and like we're gonna get to meet a whole new crew of characters. And so that is very interesting. It's very interesting how they're doing this trilogy. This is something unique, and when it's all finished, I'll be able to have a better reflection of what I like or don't like about this form of storytelling. But the
But
fact that you build the trilogy up front and it's because it's not structured like a show. Like, because I was thinking about that, I was like, well, is this just a glorified 6 to 8 episode show that they put together into 3 parts? But no, the way this episode is structured, I mean, you might could have cut it up, possibly, but it really flows as a film.
well, on
Um,
it when I looked at the IMDb, Dina and Josh are still listed as the main people, even
yeah,
going into the second film. So I think there's going to be like more of a flashback while still carrying on parts of the first film.
agreed. Because the central conflict is in '94. Yeah, just at this point trying to save Sam.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, the part three, 1666. That's the founding of Sunnyvale. So that had that, definitely not a coincidence. That'll play in. But yeah, really cool. I'm wondering why they decided to do this in July as opposed to October. Because there's even I don't know what time of year this takes place. I think I saw some jack o' lanterns. I don't know if it's supposed to be in October. Um, I don't know. It just
Well,
has that Halloween feel to me. Oh, yeah, I thought it was a little. I mean, obviously the second one is going to take place in a camp, so that's summertime. So maybe that was the reason. I don't know.
I'm thinking just based on timing, it's football season in high school, so it had to at least be mid-August, if not September already. So not July,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. Um,
I'm not complaining. I think they're doing it right
no,
now because a lot of people, uh, they're still wanting to go back to the movies, but they're not. There's still not a lot of movies being played. You got Black Widow coming up, but there's still not a lot of things in the theaters. So I think this was their version of their summer blockbusters.
Yeah, I could see that. And plus, it's somewhat of an experiment, for Netflix, and so, um, yeah, I could see that. But this if I'm Netflix, I'm going to, even after the third film drops, I would re-promote it in October.
Oh
Be
yeah,
like, hey, yeah, did you not watch the trilogy? Here's the Fear Street trilogy. Watch it in October. And if I was them, I'd push it like that.
yes, I agree 100%.
Because if the next two films are on par with this first one, this is definitely something that I could see revisiting in October every year, and watching the three films. I hope the next two are solid, because this one I was just, it wasn't what I expected. I went into it not expecting sort of a hard R film, and
No,
and
not even a little bit.
because typically, Netflix original films are okay. They're not typically what I would consider above average. Their shows are, but usually when they do a film, it's sort of like, it was all right. And to me, this was better than all right. Like, this was almost like pay full price and go to the movies material. So I was just very impressed. Now, I'm someone who loves horror, so let that be known. I watch a lot of horror films, so. But yeah, very impressed.
Yeah, oh, excuse me. It's one of those movies that I probably would have paid to see if it was October.
Yeah. Um, Scream's coming up, I think, in January. So when it's going to come out, the next one.
Um,
If I'll say that if these Fear Street reviews do well enough, and you would like for us to go back and revisit the Scream movies,
I'm down.
I would love to
Scream
review them.
ago.
Review all of them leading to the new film. I'd do that.
So would I.
I haven't seen three or I saw one so many times.
I was gonna say into within the last like month and a half.
Yeah, three and the last. I've only seen the last one once, and I saw three. I saw three. I saw two and three in theaters. I didn't. I saw one on VHS back in the day, but part three, I hated three, and then four was okay.
You didn't like Cotton?
But the new one, I never watched the show.
I didn't either.
I heard it was. I heard it was all right.
I don't have any qualms against it. I just didn't. I just didn't.
So fuck that show.
So it's dumb as shit.
But all right, yeah. So anything else?
I do not have anything else.
So yeah, we really would like your feedback for these reviews. This is something a little odd. We don't typically do Netflix stuff all that often, just the way they drop things. The fact that this is three movies, one a week. It's horror. We don't do as much horror as I would like to do. So that's probably the number one genre that I watch typically, and yet we don't really do a whole lot. Now, truthfully, in the past, we did do a lot of horror. A lot of those videos have been taken down for various reasons. But I don't know. I'd like to get back into doing horror reviews more often.
I'm down.
Yeah. So if you're into that, let us know in the comments, and we will see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.